Disclaimer: the views and opinions expressed by the guests and hosts of this show are their own and do not necessarily reflect the views or opinions of the company or the show itself. The discussions and statements made during this program are intended for informational purposes. Listeners are encouraged to critically evaluate the content and form their own opinions.
So, hello, Explore Bookworms. I am Victoria, your host for today's episode. I am so glad to be here, and I'm excited to introduce our guests for today's episode. But before that, I hope all of you are tuning in. And if you haven't subscribed to our social media channels, don't forget to subscribe and follow and visit our Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube pages. And if you are an aspiring author and if you have a manuscript of any genre, publish your book with Explora Books now by visiting and messaging us through the website explorabooks.com. Now, I am really honored to introduce our guest. He is a self-published author of a book that tackles Christian theology and the balance of faith and science. And I'm just excited as you are. So it is my honor to introduce the author of the book, What is Truth? Finding Truth in a Lost World, Terry Hakanson. Hello, Terry.
Hi. Hi, Victoria.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Terry, for being here, and thank you for your time. Now, for the benefit of the viewers, I just want to ask, where are you located right now?
I live in Missouri, southeast Missouri.
That's really nice. And now, before we dive into your book, I'm just really curious. What is your what are the things that have been keeping you busy lately?
That that what?
What are the things that have been keeping busy that has been keeping you busy lately?
Oh boy, everything. I've been traveling out of state for the last 2 weeks. I've had some business meetings and then a house and animals. I got animals I feed outside and animals I feed inside, and I'm working on my next book actually, and so I stay busy.
That's really amazing. And I think that's really a great way, to really connect to your inner core as an author. I think it's very important for you to really connect with the things that you really love doing to at least build up your ideas, perhaps as you begin your own book. Now, as a bookworm myself, I just want to ask, what is this book? Okay.
Now I don't hear your voice either. I know, but I don't hear your voice either. We lost the mic also.
Okay. So going back, as a bookworm myself, I'm really curious. What is this book about? Tackling about what is truth and finding truth in a lost world.
This book is in response to decades, really, of misinformation. Um, in fact, I was just looking in Second Ephesians, the the chapter of Ephesians 2:2, and it talks about the prince of the powers of the air. And I
Mm,
believe that's a lot of that is our media. It's our,
mm,
you know, legacy uh, media such as ABC and CBS and CNN and MSNBC and so many of them. And so it's my belief that people have been propagandized by misinformation, by
yeah.
by media sources that are only projecting their point of view. And what their point of view is this: it's godlessness. It's
Mm,
anything but God. And that's and
mm-hmm,
so, and so people have been bombarded by all this media talk about, you know, conservatives and this and that, and then they try to push these false doctrines, and so a lot of Christians, in my mind, have been bombarded by misinformation, and so this is an attempt to um, to bring out truth. In fact, Denzel Washington, one of my favorite philosophers, said, if you don't read the newspaper every day, you're uninformed. If you do
mm,
read it, you're misinformed.
mm-hmm. That's
And
that's a very strong point. Yeah.
mhm.
I hate to cut you off, Terry. Would you mind stepping closer to your mic or adjusting your
Oh,
mic?
sure, sure.
Yeah.
In fact, I can move the mic closer
Yeah.
like that,
You can move
and
it.
I can
Yeah, you
turn it
can move
up.
the mic a bit.
Yeah, I've
Yeah,
got a
of course.
volume on it.
That would be better. That would be better.
Okay, I'll turn it up too. All right, there it is.
All right. Thank you so much, Harry. It sounds so much better. Now, to go back to what you've said, I really think it was a strong point because, especially now, and with the younger generation, media has become a source or a tool where we tend to follow, or some other people tend to follow blindly of what they believe is the truth. And I think your book would be one way to open their eyes once more and to challenge themselves that, you know, there we can really challenge ourselves and really take the step to finding what really is the truth. And you have a strong point about what Denzel Washington said. Now, in your book, there was a powerful quote. It was something like, I can't do anything to stop the truth. So, what inspired you to write that certain statement?
Well, that's actually a verse in the Bible, and which is right in the book. And here's the book, and it says, and it's 2 Corinthians 13:8, and it says, "I can't do anything to stop the truth. I can only work for the truth." And
Mhm,
so that was something that Paul, after he had been converted, and before, when he was persecuting Christians, he was going by the name of Saul. But
mhm,
was when he had the miraculous exchange with Jesus Christ on the road to Damascus, then he became Paul. And then he said, "This is the truth, and I can't do anything but talk about the truth." And so that's my point too, is, I step on a lot of toes sometimes because I'll say, "Well, that's not necessarily true." And
mhm.
so,
Yeah. Yeah, it's really beautiful because the point that I'm getting from what you said, especially the part about Paul being Saul, is not resisting the enlightenment of the truth, or the enlightenment that truth carries into you, because the more you resist it, the more it becomes difficult to navigate your life. And you said it so beautifully, especially in that quote, I can't do anything to stop the truth. And, there was a certain part right after that statement, which is, instead work with the
I
truth.
can
Am I
only
right? Have I
work
got
for yes,
work?
I can't
Yes,
do anything
def.
to stop the truth. I can only work for the truth.
Mm. I can only work for the truth. And it holds a deep meaning, especially now with, there's so much noise with modern, or the modern life and social media, and we often forget to look into ourselves and to seek the truth, which is, you mentioned God, and the enlightenment that truth brings. Now, I have another follow-up question. You talk about um, a lost world. What do you think is making it so hard for people to find or even care about truth right now?
I think that people who hear the truth can recognize it, but so many people are blinded, and they think that the reliable news sources that they've been following for decades, they think it's still reliable, where it's not reliable.
Mhm,
One and it's kind of like, if a person went into a courtroom and the prosecutor is saying, this guy did this terrible thing, and this guy this horrible thing, and this guy did this horrible thing, and the person in the courtroom says, yeah, this guy must really be bad, and then they leave the courtroom. But as they're driving
mhm,
out of the parking lot, the defense lawyer comes up and states the other side of the case. But these people have
mhm.
already left, so they don't hear the whole story.
Yeah.
And a lot of this is, with the last election in the United States with President Trump, so many people hated Trump because all they hear is the prosecution of the legacy media that's saying he's this and this and this and this, and they say, "Oh yeah, that's what he is." And they don't hear the other side of
Mm,
the story.
yeah.
So
Hmm.
and so, and ultimately, what the truth really begins with also is that when a person believes and understands that there is a God, and they can know for a fact that there is a God, then their life will start changing and start accepting truth. The
Mm-hmm.
beginning to realize that there is a God is the beginning of wisdom.
Mm. You said it so beautifully. And I think the point that I'm getting there is when you are in search for the truth, you don't just stop at a certain point. You try to open your mind as much as possible and look at different angles in order to build, your firm perspective. And and eventually you mentioned about the truth, God being the truth. And of course, rebuild your faith as well as you begin to open your mind and see people as they are. Because God is the truth, and God has been very open, accepting to people no matter what backgrounds they came from. And I think that your book would really open the eyes of the readers, of your potential readers, about the beauty of the truth and the beauty of finding the truth in a lost world. Now, going and in connection to what you've said, in, not, I can't do anything to stop the truth. You mentioned the truth goes through three stages, which is ridicule, opposition, and then acceptance. Now, can you give us a quick example of that from your own life?
Well, I've got some examples in the book, and I could think of examples in my life, but not right offhand. But basically,
Hmm.
when let's say Columbus in the
Yeah.
1400s said, "No,
Hmm.
the Earth isn't flat, the Earth is round," and everybody laughed at him and say, "Listen to this clown. He says the world's round." And because they believed that the world was flat, and then if you went sailing
Hmm.
far enough into the ocean, you'd sail over the edge of the Earth. And they also believed, that there was monsters that could swallow up ships and that sort of thing. So the new truth that he brought forward was, no, the earth is not flat, it is round. So they ridiculed him. And a lot of people persecuted him. And eventually it was proven that he was right. And they go, oops, I guess he was right after all.
Hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
and
Yeah. Go on. Go on.
Well, and the same thing happened with Galileo, and these are both in the book where Galileo said, the Earth isn't the center of the universe, and
Yeah.
it actually goes around the sun, and everybody laughed at him, but at that time they were actually persecuting people who were saying these kind of things, and
Hmm.
most
Yeah.
people would have been burnt at the stake by the church. And
Yeah.
because Galileo was so respected, they didn't burn him at the stake. They only locked him up in house arrest for the rest of his life. But then
Hmm.
eventually they said, "Oh, I guess you're right."
Yeah, those are very good examples of the three stages, which is ridicule, opposition, and acceptance. And I think that really applies to our life right now at this era, because there are so many changes going on, and people have been so used to what they believe is a truth, and when the actual truth comes in, they begin to oppose, they
Oh
begin to
yeah.
react in a certain way. And yeah, I think your book really resonates to that a lot. And this challenges people to think and to stir a discussion that, oh, maybe this is the truth. Maybe what they're saying is right. Why won't I investigate more? And then that begins the journey of finding what is true and what is real. You said it so beautifully, and you've explained all these examples really well. So, and I just want to talk about, another part of your book where you also talked about how humans are unique because we're made in God's image. And this has also been mentioned in another episode in your podcast, I believe. So, can you
Mhm.
elaborate to us here how humans are truly unique?
Well, I think of let's say life sources. You got
Mhm.
life sources such as trees and plants and animals. And these are all things that are living, but they're different than humans because they're not made in the image of God. Humans are made in the image and likeness of God in that we're able to think and we're able to
Mhm.
choose. We can say, oh, that's the wrong thing to do, and I'm not going to do it. But an animal only acts instinctually, and they will defend their baby bear cubs and their
Mhm.
bird nests and this sort of thing, but they don't
Yeah.
think about that. That's just acting instinctually. So we're made uniquely like God, which is the ability to not only think and plan, but to create things. We can create books and we can create bridges. We don't just build homes, we build hospitals and we build factories. This is
Mhm.
totally different than animals and plants and trees.
Yes, and I think that really still connects on God being the truth, because all of this would be nothing without something beyond our knowledge, something beyond our understanding. You know, we cannot comprehend how humans can invent something that we haven't thought of before. Like, for example, perhaps AI or something more than AI. Like, really, like, where did that came from? And we can think
Mhm.
there is something bigger than us, and that is God, which is the truth. And that truth gave us these gifts for us to utilize in search for the truth of the meaning or purpose of our lives. That is so amazing. And of course, before we move on to our discussion, Terry, I just want to invite our viewers. Of course, if you haven't grabbed a copy of the book, What is Truth? Finding Truth in a Lost World by Terry Hakanson, don't miss the chance. You can grab a copy on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, and other digital bookstores. So, moving on, I have another question, Terry, and I just really want to know in a section in your book where you compare the trinity of fire, light, and heat. Yeah. Can you please explain what that is?
Yes, yes, and I came kind of prepared for some of these questions because I didn't know what you were gonna ask, but, when I first learned the truth of this, it was profound, and
Mhm.
just like in the Bible says, "Let us make mankind, humankind, in our likeness." God was saying "our," and some people would say, "What do you mean our?" Wouldn't God say, make humans and women and men in my likeness?" But he says, "In our likeness," because God
Mhm.
is a Trinity, and God is three, and yet God is one. And I like to
Mhm.
think of a fire. And so on a fire, you've got the fire itself, and you've got the light of the fire, and you've also
Mhm.
got the heat, smoke of the
Yeah.
fire. So you have one fire, but the fire is not light, and the fire is not heat and smoke. If you
Mhm.
have light, you will have the fire and you will have the heat and smoke. If you have any one of them, you will have the other two because they exist with each other and for each other. That you can't
Yeah.
have the fire without having light and without having smoke. You got the fire, you
Yeah.
got the heat, and you got the smoke. And
Beautiful.
Jesus is the light of the world, and the Holy
Mhm.
Spirit is the heat, smoke, and God the Father is the fire.
Wow. You explained it so well. I mean, to be honest, Terry, I never understood the Holy Trinity in that way. I knew the Holy Trinity function as one, but to explain that in an analogy like fire, light, and heat, I think I kind of understood what it is now. And I really appreciate how you put it that way, especially for our readers who are in search for the truth, because, these things can be quite complex for other readers to understand, especially when they venture on their own as they navigate their lives. And I love how you explained it so in a very authentic and a simple way. I'm a bookworm myself, and I kind of grasp the concept and the idea. It's so beautiful.
You
Thank you
had
so
a
much, Terry.
you had an aha moment where people hit themselves in the forehead and go, "Aha, I see the light."
Definitely. Yeah. I think you saw the aha moment on my face when you
I
explained all
did,
that.
and that makes me feel really satisfied and happy.
Oh, that's really great, Terry. And we are so grateful to have published authors, self-published authors like you who really try their best and who really do their best to, explain all these complex things and try to encapsulate it in one book. Now, I have just one more question.
Mhm.
You argue that math and logic point to truth. Why do you think so many people still struggle with the idea of absolute truth?
I think that people are confused because of propaganda, not just from the media, but propaganda
Mhm.
from the schools, from the universities, from the professors that say science and God aren't compatible. That is not true. God is the creator of science. And, there's a very logical explanation for our existence. And I'll tell you an illogical perspective of our existence. The Big Bang Theory says that an infinitely compressed point of energy, high density and high temperature, exploded 13.8 billion years ago. But and they say that's how our world began. But
Mhm.
the question is, where did that singularity, that point of infinite energy come from? It had to come from something because things don't
Yeah.
spontaneously appear out of nothingness. Now, this is the first law of thermodynamics of physics. And so, in other words, science reinforces the fact that in the beginning, God created. Not in the beginning, the Big Bang created, God created. And
Mm.
so, once people understand that there's a God, their lives will change because they'll all of a sudden say, wow, which I've been taught over to here isn't necessarily true. And I want to look more over here and I want to look at the Bible and say, forget what my professors and people tell me in the media. The Bible is true. God created all things. And if anything, if nothing else, God created that singularity because things do not appear on their own out of nothingness.
Mhm. That's very beautiful, Terry. And I really like how you get to put in science and still acknowledge that science is nothing if it weren't for the power and the truth of God that He has provided to us humans. And I think that really encapsulates the balance of faith and science. That as
Yes.
much as it is important that we try to develop and work our way to have a developed community or society, it is just as important that we also rebuild our faith and rebuild our connection with the truth, which is God. Wow, that is
Mhm.
so amazing. I hope I could read your book one day. I'm really looking forward to look more into the details of your book. And so, of course, again, to our Explore bookworms, if you want to grab a copy of Terry Hakanson's book, which is What is Truth? Finding Truth in the Lost World, please do grab a copy on Amazon and Barnes and Nobles. Oh my gosh, I messed that up. Amazon, Barnes and Noble, and other digital bookstore platforms. And one last question, Terry. I just want to know, how is it working with Explora Books so far?
It's very good. I have a close relationship even with the president of your company, and I'm a
Hmm.
songwriter by nature, and he's a
Oh, that's really nice.
musician, and so he's interested in a lot of my songs.
Oh, that's amazing. Actually, I'm a singer-songwriter too. So it's really good to know that you get to keep a balance of, writing your books and writing songs all together. Once again, thank you. Thank you so much, Terry, for taking the time to be here and for sharing your insights of the creative journey and, of this amazing book. And good luck with your future projects and endeavors. And I hope to see you soon on another episode.
That sounds great. I'm always open to talking with you anytime, Victoria. Thank you
Thank you
very
so
much
much,
for
Terry.
for
I'll see
having
you
me.
soon. Of
Thank you.
course. Thank you so much. God bless you.
Bye. Oh,
Bye
God bless you
bye.
too. May God bless you.
Yes.
That
May God bless
that's a
you
very
too.
important thing to say.
Definitely. I always say that too.
All right. Well,
Bye.
bye.
Once again, this has been your host, Victoria. And if you haven't subscribed or followed on our social media accounts, don't forget to do so. Our links are here and below. You can visit our pages on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram. Once again, it's so good to be here and thanks for tuning in. I hope to see you again as we explore more about books and self published authors only here on Explora Talks.